In this instructional video, we're still going to continue using the rectangular coordinate system, some graphing techniques, and one more formula to look at. It's called the midpoint formula. Now, this one's a little bit nicer than the distance formula was, so let's look at this formula here. And it kind of makes sense because if you have 2 points, and of course we're going to label those points again like we did with distance, x1, y1, and x2, y2, and again, it doesn't matter which one you call which as long as you're consistent, would have this as the midpoint. This ordered pair, you add up the x's, divide by 2, and you add up the y's and divide by 2. So let's take a graph here, and we'll just pick 2 points, and we'll find the midpoint here for fun. And we'll go with a pretty green color here. And let's take the ordered pair in the second quadrant, -2, 6. Okay, so I'll go ahead and we'll label this point. And I'll take a point way down in the fourth quadrant. Let's take 4, -8, just so I have different numbers here. 4, -8. And I'll use my line tool here, and I'll try to make a pretty green line between these. And I mean, I always have the rulers and stuff, but I try to get it as straight as I can here for you. It's not too bad. I tell you. All right, so let me see if I can make this point a little prettier down here, a little more point looking. All right, now we're going to go ahead and use that formula now, and we're going to write the formula for midpoint, and yes, you will have one of these on the test, as x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. And I don't care which point y'all want to label x1, y1. I'm just going to take the top one here for fun. I'll call this one x1, y1. I like in that last video, you can call the other one that if you want. And this one x2, y2. It will not matter in your answer. That's the beauty of it, as long as you do the math right. All right, so let's go ahead and plug in. So if I take the 2 x's, if I take -2 plus 4 divided by 2, and the 2 y values, y1 and y2, 6 plus -8 divided by 2. Now, I know what y'all are saying, put a lot of these on the test, you know why. Well, you do have some now. That will give us 2, -2 plus 4 is 2 over 2, so that will reduce to 1. 6 plus -8 would be -2 over 2, which would reduce to -1. So that point would be the exact middle of these other 2 points. Now let's take a red and see if I plot that point 1, -1 here on my pretty green line. Does that look like it's in the middle to y'all? Well, it should. It should be the exact midpoint of those 2 points. So you can really use this stuff here. And we're not even done, ladies and gentlemen. Now then, they're going to try to pull your chains a little bit here. And they're going to say, find the coordinates of the midpoint with the segment with endpoints 8, -4, and 6, -1. All right, so they give us the endpoint, so we're just going to go ahead and plug in here. And again, we'll call this one, the first one here, x1, y1, and this one x2, y2. And plugging in and dividing by 2, we get the midpoint of 1 and -3/2. Now, does it bother you came up with a fraction this time? Don't worry about that. Okay, let's keep going. Now, it says use the midpoint formula to determine the following. It says find the coordinates of the other endpoint now of a segment given an endpoint and the midpoint. So what we're going to do is let x and y represent the coordinates, and we're going to call that other endpoint we're after b. So in this case, we have to use the midpoint formula because they gave us the midpoint. Oh, those dirty dogs. They always try to take something easy and make it hard. I don't know why they do that. All right, so you see how this graphic is laid out here. We're going to say x plus that x value of the other endpoint, -6 divided by 2, will equal the x value of the midpoint, 8. And on the right side, the y plus 12, if you add up the y value, so the coordinate of b is y, plus that x value of a is 12 divided by 2, will give you the midpoint of y, -2. So the other endpoint would have to be, when you go through the math and do it, 22, negative 16. Now, did y'all remember on these fractional equations, oh, there's one we haven't seen for a while, multiply through by the LCD of 2 to clear those fractions. And if you do it there, the LCD also is 2 over here. So it looks like they skipped a step there. Young never skip steps. Now, you can actually use midpoint, you business majors, in certain areas too. It says the graph indicates the increase of McDonald's restaurants worldwide from 20,000 in 1996 to 31,000 in 2006. Use the midpoint formula and the two given endpoints to estimate the number of restaurants in 2001 and compare it to the actual rounded figure of 30,000. So here's what the graph would look like. So notice we're taking the years here, the year on the bottom, so we're calling the year X from 1996 to 2006. And in thousands here in 1996, there's 20. And then in 2006, there's the other one. So we're going to see about the midpoint here. Now, if we actually calculated the midpoint using this data, we would add the X values, divide by 2. And we would add the Y values, divide by 2. So we would get in that middle year of 2001, according to the midpoint formula, 25.5, which is well below the actual figure of 30,000. So Mickey D's was doing better than the midpoint formula would have suggested. So there are business applications to this as well. Okay, that's it for the midpoint. Professor Young signing off.